The following is a Candlepin Stars and Strikes rebroadcast featuring some of our most memorable recent programs.
Hi, everybody, and welcome once again to Park Place Lanes here in Windham for Candlepin Stars and Strikes. Doug Brown along with Dan Murphy. We're so happy you could join us once again here at noon. We've got 2 big hours of bowling for you coming up. Of course, the Stars and Strikes doubles to follow. And we begin today, Dan, with our second series of the new season.
It's going to be a great one, too, and 2 great bowlers, Dan Brodeur and Tim Lipke, who have met before, been on our show against other people, but back in '84, if you remember, they had a great match, 420, 405, and Timmy came out the winner.
I didn't remember it because I can't remember what I had for breakfast. You remembered they were here on the same show 7 years ago. I'm very impressed. But we'll tell you more about the rest of the bowlers in this series. But first of all, let's meet the bowlers for today's show. Our number 5 seed, Dan already mentioned he's been here several times before, from Londonderry, New Hampshire, Tim Lipke.
Okay, Timmy comes in averaging 129 as an individual high single of 200 and an individual high triple of 515.
Not too bad. Not too shabby. Not too many with 500s.
That's right. That's a 4-game total.
We'll have to find out if maybe.
That's right. Is that a high triple or high 4?
All right, and the number 4 seed, Tim's opponent for this afternoon's show, will be from Bow, New Hampshire, also a veteran here on Stars and Strikes, Dan Brodeur.
Okay, an average is 125, a high single 187, and a high triple of 441.
And, of course, we have 3 other outstanding Candlepin bowlers waiting in line in the weeks ahead to try and get that automatic qualifying spot into the Tri-State Megabucks Tournament of Champions. We'll tell you all about that. We'll bring you up to date on the bonus ball contest. We had a winner last week. All of that plus 3 exciting strings of bowling coming right up after these messages. Don't go away. We'll be right back. As promised, here's a look at what's coming up in the weeks ahead here on Stars and Strikes as we begin a brand new series championship. Tim Lipke and Dan Brodeur get it started today. The winner of this match faces Bob Kelly next week. Stu Bergman is here in 2 weeks and sitting in that number 1 spot with the 690 roll-off score to qualify in the top spot. Joe Ashline, who of course no stranger to the program. So another strong-looking series, and set to get us started here on lane 32 is Tim Lipke, as he is set to face Dan Brodeur here on Stars and Strikes. And I am truly astonished that you remember this show from this match where these 2 guys faced each other. It was October 7th, 1984. And you remembered it.
And they went at it, too. You know, just quickly going over the scores. Tim Lipke with a 420, 122, 144, and a final 154. And Dan Brodeur's 405, 113, 137, and a 155. So 155, 154, respectively, for the bowlers that last game. And it was just a great one to watch.
Well, Tim won that one, and he's won a bundle here on Stars and Strikes. He's been here 9 times. He's won 6 of them. And he opens up with the 10.
I'm sure that's not the highest losing score we've ever had, but it's certainly one of the highest ones.
Tim was on our Tri-State Megabucks Tournament of Champions back in the spring. Won a match before being eliminated.
And as we speak, Timmy is currently leading the WCBC Pro Tour event that was held, or that is being held, Concord, New Hampshire. One, 2, 4, 7, and the 8-pin in the back for Tim.
Very unusual that you would see someone pick out just the 1 and the 8. And a 19 opening pair for Tim Lipke. And that brings up Dan Brodeur. Dan was with us last season as well, but was unable to qualify for the Tournament of Champions. But he is a fine Candlepin bowler and certainly capable of putting a lot of big games together.
Absolutely is.
As noticed right there with that shot.
3, 5, 6, and 10, and he just clears those 4 pins out with no problem. First mark of the match.
I should mention quickly, Dan, before we get too far into the show, that For those of you who'd like to see Candlepin Stars and Strikes as it is taped live here at Park Place Lanes in Windham, we're here today. And we'll be here until, 4 o'clock, 4:30, however late Dan can stay, then we shut it down.
Danny, a little skip that time, dropped the ball prematurely and missed the object pin, which is the 3-pin. And he had a real fine chance at making that, I think, if he hit the object pin with a piece of wood angled behind the 3 and the 6.
So in any event, we would certainly like to have you come down later today, this afternoon, if you get a chance. Of course, watch the show first.
Absolutely.
Watch the shows first and then stop down.
In fact, we'll check anyone walking in late today. Well, hey, did you watch both shows, as a matter of fact? Oh, watch out.
Well, Tim will have a little something to shoot at, although that wood is possibly a problem. Now it's sliding away.
The 10-pin, piece of wood froze behind it.
First spare.
No problem for Tim. 29 through 3 with a bonus ball to come. Tim does his bowling at the Londonderry Bowling Center in Londonderry.
Not so surprising, seeing as he's the assistant manager.
4 horsemen plus the 5-pin.
Tim and his wife Wendy have a daughter Shauna and son Shane, and just missing. And a 10 in the 4th. The finals, by the way, the final roll-off for this series was held at the Dover Bowling Center.
Dan Brodeur up for his 3rd and 4th frames. Whoa, that was a big ball. No doubt about that one. 1-3 pocket. 7-pin was a little stubborn, but finally went down for the strike.
Just got a little tap on that 7-pin. Pull that one a bit to the left.
Possibilities, 1, 3, the 4, the 9, and the 10. Object pin being the head pin, and if he clips the head pin, he's got a real chance of making this for a spare.
And let's see, it'll be a 9-box. And an 8-pin advantage for Dan Brodeur after the first 4. There you see it. Big ball for Tim Lipke, but somehow the 4-pin is still there.
And all by itself.
Right on it.
Spare in the 5th.
Right there, that we've talked about it a lot over the years, but right there, a shot like that is the difference between a 129 average and a 109 average,
Right.
or a 99 average, maybe.
Right back in the pocket, and gets a good break when the 4-pin goes down, this time leaving him just the 10-pin.
And I have to check that pin out in front. Looks like it's out of play, but Francis Stanwood will go down and have a look at it. It is not going to be in Tim's way, even if it is in play. But we'll have a look just to be safe.
I'd say that's probably out, but he's taking.
Yeah, it looked like it was. It looked like it was pretty far and forward there, and wasn't going to be in play in any event. So another single pin for Tim to shoot at. Talking about the single pins, that really is.
Well, when you think about the game, every single shot, there's a single pin that you have to hit
Right.
in order to give yourself a chance to make the shot. But I agree with you. When it's standing down there all by itself, it's a challenging shot.
And Tim makes 2 of them there, back to back, putting the spares up.
Danny right back in the pocket again, and a big strike.
Let go of that ball a little bit late, it appeared, but it hung out there for him.
course, speaking about single pins, I had once a fellow tell me that, you know, if you miss a single, you're missing it by a foot, because the ball's 4.5 inches and the pin's about 2.5, and you got 4.5 on the. Oh, it was a big double strike by Dan Brodeur, and it's 4.5 inches on the other side. So actually, you're shooting at a foot. So it made me feel real good when I missed my next single pin.
Double strike for Dan Brodeur. He didn't miss anything on those 2 shots.
And no doubt about either one of them.
Tim Lipke is working on back-to-back spares, and he's got another 9-drop, his 3rd in a row.
And another testy single pin, this time the 7 pin.
Three in a row, all singles. Tim is just illustrating my point beautifully here.
Yes.
Making 3 in a row. This time, he'll have to settle for an 8-drop.
Missing the head pin, but got himself a decent break, leaving the 1 and the 7. A couple pieces of wood now, that's probably going to help him, but again, to make the shot or give himself a legitimate shot at making it, that's the single pin being the head pin is the object. Oh,
nope.
That close.
Nope.
So the string of marks stops at 3.
110 through 8, but that may not be good enough to have the lead in this one.
Well, you get a double strike working, and that's fine and dandy, but this becomes so very important, this next ball.
On the head pin again, it's the triple strike. 3 strikes in a row for Dan Brodeur, and it looked for a moment like he would have the 7-10.
As I said, you don't want to go through the middle or have a lousy break on that first ball because it counts in both frames. And he does much better than I even thought. Triple strike, going for 4 in a row. A little hop that time, but he got away with it. 1, 3, and 6. He's going to have a whopping opening game.
If he stopped right now, he'd have a pretty good score.
Trying to cover the 1, 3, and the 6. Got a little heavy on the head pin.
127 through 7. And make it 136 through 8 for a 26-pin advantage for Dan Brodeur on the strength of that triple strike.
26-pin advantage, and he only has 1 more mark than Timmy. But Timmy's are all spares, and Dan is, well, he's got 5 marks, and 4 of them are strikes.
Very light, unusual hit that time by Tim, and he's got the 2, the 5, the 7, and the 10 with wood. This could be interesting.
And he's going to go after the 2-pin. I think well, even splitting him, he's got a real good shot. Ooh, he had a real good shot without splitting him. Wood came.
Actually,
Well,
he knew
to watch out here. Watch out.
Yes! The golf rule in effect on that one. You can stand and watch it on the edge of the cup there for, what is it, 30 seconds?
Just misses it there. And there's a little lip where the lane drops off onto the plate. Now, it's just enough momentum to roll back and hit it square and put a ring around that one. That might be a big mark in this match.
We couldn't have rolled that one in slow motion. We would have taken the rest of the show.
4 horsemen this time with the 7 and the 8 pins in the back. I didn't think I thought it had a chance of going, but there was another piece of wood behind it that I thought may have stopped it, but well, it didn't. We put a mark up there for him.
Well, Tim got the break on the mark, but was unable to fill it the way he would have liked, so he'll take a 133 in this opening game. And as you see, that leaves the door open a bit for Dan Brodeur.
Leading by 26 now, and he would love to put 2 more marks up.
Off target that time.
4 horsemen right plus the 8.
Dan's wife, Marlene Brodeur, has also been on Stars and Strikes. They live in Bow. Dan works at the Concord Litho Company. Missing the head pin again.
Dan does his bowling at Boutwell's Bowling Center in Concord, New Hampshire.
I noticed that.
Great place to visit. Yeah, anyone's in the area should stop by. Even if you're not in the area, stop by. And Danny and I do a lot of bowling together. We bowl in doubles in the state tournament and bowl in a couple teams in league competition. So know Dan quite well as Timmy in Pro Tour.
Dan being patient, trying to wait for that wood in back to settle. Again, this is one of those situations where it probably won't affect the shot, but
and it's 145 with a box to come, leading by 21.
Coming up after this break, the end of the game, we will have our bonus ball contest address for you. We had a $110 winner last week, Francis Boisvert from Exeter, New Hampshire. And we'll be recycling the jackpot down to $20 as Dan Brodeur gets the diamond. Took a while, but he got it to go over.
He was a little light on the shot. And actually that wood capped the ball, sent the ball away from the pins, but wood came off the wall enough to take that 6-pin.
Well, if I told you before you started a game that you'd have 2 spares and yet you'd have a 159, would you be happy?
Yeah, I guess I would.
That's what happened to Dan Brodeur because he put 4 strikes up in that game. 3 of them were consecutive. And he's got the lead by 26 at the end of game 1. We'll be back in a moment. All right, Dan Brodeur with a 26-pin lead, set to go here in game number 2 after an outstanding 159 opening game.
Hardly worked up a sweat. Didn't throw that many balls. Right back on the head pin again, this time through the middle though. 2-4-7 on the left with the 3-6. He had a shot at making that one, hitting the 3-pin. I thought the wood would kick forward, but it didn't.
Talked about that match these two guys had 7 years ago.
Right on pace again. Huh?
Yeah, a double 400. It could happen again. 10 in the first for Dan.
A few weeks ago, I mentioned some people that I met in the Sky Dome, and of course, I didn't bring their names with me, but I don't know how I could have forgotten this name. From Nashua, a family that was up the Sky Dome. Oh, look at that 10-pin slid over and
looks like it's partly over the edge of the lane.
And that family from Nashua I saw at the Sky Dome were Ed, Peg, Stephanie, Eddie, and James Bush. I don't know how I could have. Oh, a great shot by Dan Brodeur, a 5-10. Used the wood effectively to come across. I thought he knocked the 10-pin down twice in that box. So the Bush family from Nashua, avid watchers of Candlepin, Stars and Strikes.
Did they mention whether they were related?
No, and he didn't offer the information, so I have a funny feeling they're Democrats.
Oh, great shot for Tim Lipke in the first.
3-6,
That's a way to get a
4-7.
game started, yep.
Watch the 3-pin. No doubt about that one. Great shot by Timmy.
His 6th mark, all of them spares.
Off target. To the right, 4. I'll tell you, both bowls look exceptionally sharp early in the match. If they both can keep the flow going, you could see some real big scores.
Tim was a little too fine on that. $10.
24 through 22 for Timmy. The lead drops temporarily anyways to 22. Dan Brodeur will increase that by the number of pins he knocks down with his first ball. And make it 8.
Coming this way.
9. And I believe this is Dan's first test of a single. 3 pin.
Hasn't really had that many spare leaves to shoot at. It's been either strike or nothing most of the time.
He covers that. 2 in a row. It's got to be a real concern for Timmy when a fellow throwing 4 strikes against you in the first string. You're throwing spares and dropping the lead by 10 at a time a lot of times.
Another spare leave for Dan.
I thought he was going to have just a 3 pin again. No, at this time, see Danny kind of coaxing the wood out of the way, but it turned a little bit for him, I believe. He's going to just try to drive the ball straight back through the 3 pin. Just
yes.
Like that. Danny looks awful sharp as well. 3 in a row for him.
Well, he was featuring the strikes in the first game. Now he's got the spares working.
Well, Danny realizes the competition he's up against with Timmy, and he just doesn't want to look back. He just wants to keep firing the ball. Every mark you get, you're looking for 7 or better, and just try to ignore your opponent. Pretty hard to do sometimes. A lot of times I try not to scoreboard watch, but it's awful difficult to not to glance over there.
Tried for all of them.
Yeah, Timmy looked like he pulled out all the stops there. He had the 2, 7, 6, 10, and most people probably would have went for the 6, 10 and grabbed 2, but he thought, well, let's try the 2 pin. If I miss it to the left, I'll get the 7, and maybe I get 2 or 3 more.
Oh, big one there.
That was his first one.
Kicking out the 8 pin for his first strike of the match, and we will take a break. Each bowler with marks up in the 4th. Tim Lipke, the big strike. He's trailing in this match as we approach the halfway point. Don't go away. Well, both bowlers working on marks. Dan Brodeur will fill his first. He's got a spare in the 4th, and he's got also a 42-pin lead.
I'm sure Timmy's thinking about the 42 pins. He's with a strike up. I'm saying, well, if you can throw it, I can throw a double. That'll certainly help the cause. And he squeaks out 8, 1 in the 10, and again, give himself a real shot. He's going to have some favorable wood here in second. Well, it may or may not. He plays the head pin to the left, the ball might catch the wood and slide it into 10. If he does that, maybe the head pin will go down. On the other hand, if he hits it full, he might deaden the head pin right there and not carry the 10.
Oh, perfect.
Absolutely was.
Went over to the left side and kicked it over.
Never used the wood at all. The head pin just got that 10 pin clean. 4 spares in a row.
Moves over to lane 31 to fill it. He's off target to the left, but he'll have again
Watch
something
out,
to shoot
watch
at.
out.
Wait a minute. Another 8 fill.
Keep moving here at Park Place. Keep those pins moving. Anything can happen. 6-10 left for Dan.
He had an option there. He could have gone for
Timmy
the pins or
Lipke's
the
in a
wood.
double strike situation already in the match. I mean, 50 pin lead, and Dan still got a mark up. Timmy has to be thinking, I need a double strike. Take a big chunk out of that lead. Halfway through.
There
it is.
There it is. Wow. Right on it. Perfect pocket hit in the 1-3 side. 2 in a row for Tim Lipke.
And of course, he's thinking, well, if Danny can throw a triple, maybe I can. Again, very important ball in double strike.
Oh, my.
That close.
He crossed over just a tad onto the Brooklyn side that time, and nothing touched the 5 pin. But he'll touch it now, right on it for the spare. Well, he's staying right with Dan Brodeur. in this game. That double strike, of course, helped.
Dan Brodeur trying to keep the string alive. 5 consecutive spares, filling the 1 in the 6th right now with his first ball.
Boy, he has taken the extra pin on several different occasions. He's punched out a couple of times and been able to just kick out an extra pin or two and get himself a break.
It looked like he's going to be left with a 2, 4, 7, 6, 10. Not a bad ball he threw. And
that was his 4th consecutive 8 drop on a spare. As you see, all the 8 fills it there, and not all of them have been clean 8 drops, but
he's made some tough spares. Or actually, tough is in the word that they were all alone. There was no wood to help. And he fills it with 9.
Looking for his 7th mark in a row.
Oh, he is right on it.
Wow.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
That's 13 marks already in this match for Dan Brodeur.
If he just stays within himself now and keeps the same flow, I mean, he's hitting the head pin. I think he probably missed it once or twice for that first ball, but he's just right in the groove.
Ooh.
Oh, tough break there. Slid the pin over.
That was on a spare, too. Tim just turned around. You might have heard him, and he said, how do you play that?
Well, you know, he's liable to cut the 3 into the 4 and leave the 6, which is at the 5.5 now.
No telling what'll happen when he sets these pins in motion. No, it was almost like they were one pin.
That's right.
They were so close together.
So as quickly he climbs back, he's going to drop quite a few more pins on the lead because Dan Brodeur refuses to let up. So the lead balloons back to 39 and threatening to go higher unless Timmy can match the mark already posted by Dan Brodeur in the 8th.
He's right on the head pin. But look what he's got left, the 7 and the 10.
But we have wood, and anytime there's playable wood out there, anything can happen. And he's just going to drive the ball into the wood in front of the 7 pin and hope he gets some sidewall kick toward the 10. Well, I think if we asked him about that shot, he said, no, I wanted a piece of that front piece. Front piece's angle where it probably would have come off the left sidewall. So, opening for Dan Brodeur to fill this mark and increase that lead.
He has 7 consecutive spares in this second game. He had 3 strikes in a row in the first game, if you tuned in late. He's going to be well over 300 for 2 games.
Back in the pocket. This time he doesn't get the extra pin, so he's going to have to try to cut the 3 into the 7. And, of course, not to forget the 6, which is still there. Well, let's see where the wood settles down. It looks like he's going to shoot the 3. Well, let's wait. A lot of possibilities here. Obviously, he's going to shoot the 3 pin. If the wood settles down, he might be able to go inside and clip the wood. The way it is right now, I think he's going to have to just use the 3-6. Trying to make it 8 spares in a row.
Nope. Well, they get the wood out of the way.
Trying to set it up for a spectacular 10.
And there you are.
147 through 9, and here's a replay of that. Plays it in the inside, and I thought right there with the other wood that might have converted for the spare, but oh well. 10th frame for Dan. He's right back in the pocket. This time another testy spare leaf. 3-6-10 on the right with a 4-7. And again, the 3 pin. That's what he's going to have to get.
Yes! How about that one?
Looked like he was a little flush on the 3, but he got some good sidewall action. He had hit the object pin, which you have to do and able to give yourself the good chance of making it. Needed some help with a 7 and got it.
157 plus a ball. He had a 159 in the opener.
We're going to start looking at records here in a minute. Low, right in the pocket, a big 9-pin drop. 166.
And that's 325 for 2 games.
Ooh.
Congratulations from Tim Lipke as he steps up to the line. He knows that
Yeah, Danny's
He's got
in
a
a
tall
groove.
order here, yep.
He's in a groove. Always thinking now, just keep everything the same. Same speed in the ball, same steps, stay down with the delivery, everything. Timmy's thinking, well, I gotta get a couple of strikes here again.
Tough when you throw a double strike in a game and you can't even gain any ground.
You want to know what's tougher? Timmy's going to be about 270 after 2, and be down by about 50.
$10, his third consecutive. But 10s aren't going to do it against Dan Brodeur today.
Now, leads 46, and he's opposite a spare 9 by Dan Brodeur. So.
Tim wanted me to mention, by the way, that next weekend he leaves for Sydney, Nova Scotia to compete on the New Hampshire team, entered in the World Candlepin Tournament. He's on the same team with Mike Poulin, Steve Vadnais, John Thomas, Brian Uphold, and Bill Gover. They'll be heading up there to compete next weekend. Right now, Tim Lipke is watching Dan Brodeur rack up some big numbers here on Candlepin Stars and Strikes. 3:25 after 2. We've got one game to go, and we'll have it after these words. All right, Tim Lipke steps up for game 3. Spent most of the break chatting with Dan, probably about asking him advice maybe about how to come back from a 56-pin deficit.
And Dan probably said you can't.
Impossible.
Go home.
But of course, with these two, it is certainly possible.
Absolutely. It's a high-scoring house, and we've got a high-scoring match, and both bowlers have thrown strikes.
Either of these guys, as you've already seen, is capable of coming back from a big deficit. So, but Tim does have to put the marks together.
Well, a 56.
56-pin lead.
56-pin lead. I'm sure Dan Brodeur's thinking if I throw 100, he throws 156, we tie. So, and to throw 156, he's got to have probably a 6 good marks. So any marks that he gets, that reduces the number of frames for Timmy. And have you got all this down? And this is how we bowlers think in matches like this. Just trying to keep yourself in perspective and don't sit on the lead. You got to go out and get them.
There's
nice
a mark
spare
to start it. That's Tim's 10th mark.
Replay that one, the 3, the 4, and the 7, piece of wood in between that Timmy uses effectively. Dan Brodeur up for his first 2. Final game, 2-string total of 325.
Oh, and he's right back with it. He's looking at the 5 and the 8.
5 and the 8, piece of wood behind, piece of wood to the right. And you got to be careful not to cap that wood. And if he slides across, that back piece will hurt him. No. Not today. Danny is right on the ball.
The all-time high triple here on Candlepin Stars and Strikes, 482 by Peter Flynn. That was some 6.5 years ago.
And Dan certainly has a legitimate shot at it the way he's throwing the ball. Right in the pocket again. This time, tough leave though. 4-7 on the left with the 10. More important, 7-pin fill on the spare. Now he's just going to go after the wood in front of the 4-7 and see what happens.
Tim Lipke, by the way, has the 3rd highest triple ever thrown here, 467. That was back in the spring of this year.
Oh, he flew the ball over towards the 10. As best you could do with that.
Started to talk about Tim's appearance next week in that World Candlepin Tournament. Again, his teammates, Mike Poulin, Steve Vadnais, John Thomas, Brian Uphold, and Bill Gover. That's a pretty good team.
Not too bad.
Nova Scotia, beautiful part of the world.
And Timmy left the ball to the right, and he looked down like he might have stuck on the approach or something. A little problem there with the slide. No problem there, though. Just missing the 7-pin for the spare.
Tim has had a bit of a problem filling marks. That's his third 4 fill, and he also had a 5 fill earlier.
He can't afford to leave open frames. He needs marks. Lead now is ballooned to 60.
Tim is off target.
4 horsemen plus the 7, 1, 3, 6, and 10. Oh, that close.
Looked like a fine shot. Just didn't carry the 7-pin.
Well, Dan Brodeur can put a few more nails in the coffin here. Opposite 2 open frames in the 3rd and the 4th. One other person I'd like to mention from Bennington are 2 other people. Probably should have mentioned them before the bushes because this fellow is retired from the state police. Howard and Ida Hemion, I believe that's the pronunciation, from Bennington, New Hampshire. Met them up at the Sky Dome this summer, and they watch us every week as well.
I get the feeling that you're going to turn this Sky Dome thing into an annual appearance, kind of do clinics there.
Oh, I guess so, yeah.
Meet all your friends from New Hampshire and stuff.
Oh, maybe we could talk to Channel 50. We could tape a couple shows up there.
They got everything else there. They might
right.
have bowling there,
I think
too.
we talked about that last week. Do the play-by-play from the Sky Dome. Dan Brodeur, 6 fill, 4-7 left, 6-10 on the right. Show you how popular Candlepin Stars and Strikes really is, and I'm sure our sponsors like to hear that as well. Rockingham, Toyota, Dodge, Nissan, and Somerville Lumber, and of course our Tri-State Megabucks.
Oh, nice 10 for Dan. We'll take a break. Dan has extended his lead even further here in the early stages of Game 3. We'll return on Stars and Strikes in a moment. Tim Lipke steps up in the 5th.
Four, 7, 8 left for Tim.
Match like this gives you an appreciation again for just how difficult it is to not only qualify for this program, but to get all the way up to the spot where you can win that series championship and qualify for the Tournament of Champions. Here's Tim, who throws a fine 665 in his roll-off to finish 5th and get onto this first show of the series, and then he comes on and comes up against a guy like Dan Brodeur, who is just having one heck of a day.
It's probably difficult to get onto the show, but on the other hand, I have found that I have a lot of borderline bowlers. I mean, bowlers that aren't averaging 120 that get into the roll-offs. There's no entry fee to try out for the show. So if they're going to go down and practice 5 games, you might as well get into the TB50 roll-off. And
you're exactly right.
And you're rubbing elbows with some of the better Candlepin bowlers, and obviously it lifts your game one more notch. And some of the bowlers are very, very appreciative. And they're getting better because they are doing it. So those of you who are questioning whether or not you should try out for the show, it doesn't cost you anything but the 5 games of bowling. So good practice. And you never know in this game. You never know. Doug even beat me once. Or was that a nightmare? I think I was dreaming that.
It was a nightmare, you're right.
2-4-7 left for Dan.
I think I told you this before off the air. I don't know if I've ever mentioned it on the air, but I can remember vividly as a teenager trying to get on some of the television shows at that time, and I remember the first time that I ever got to a final, and I was bowling on a lane next to Gary Duffett and Al Gallant. And of course, I had seen them bowl many times on TV as well as in person, and it really is something when you get in that situation for the first time.
Ooh, Danny tried the 2-pin with the wood, just barely went by it. He'll try to grab himself 3.
Well, Dan left 2 boxes open. That hasn't happened very often. 3 in a row open.
All of a sudden, he's settling in. He's having one of those mortals games that the rest of us have. He's still 10 pins over. Is that 110 clip? Timmy's looking at 610 on the right, 4-7. Still trying to cut into that 59-pin lead with only 4 frames to go, and he's really got a mark and needs strikes. Wow, what a shot.
Nice kick on that one.
Wow. Right after the 610, and watch the wood. Just enough. Double piece, kept the second piece on, clear out finally the 7-pin.
That's 12 marks for Tim. Dan has 16.
And again, Timmy, the last several marks, you get the mark and make some great shots, but then missed the head pin on the fill.
Don't forget, we'll have the bonus ball contest coming up at the end of the show. We'll chat with both bowlers. We're at $20 for this week's jackpot. And next week, Bob Kelly, our number 3 seed, comes on to face, it would appear, Dan Brodeur, unless...
Well, I think it's safe to say, well, we'll wait till these 2 boxes are through. But if I were a gambling or betting man, the game can turn on you sometimes. Dan threw that ball the first couple games. One of those 2 pins would have went down. Right now, it's... Whoa! Well, they're still coming. This time the ball. Oh, he's trying to snap the wood. Anything can happen. Watch the flight of the ball. Up and over and back down onto the 10-pin. Already at 405.
Can you explain, for those of us who've always been curious about this, I'm sure there must be other people thinking as I do, sometimes the ball will snap off a piece of wood like that and go up, and you'll never see it again. What is the configuration behind the curtain there, or behind the pin deck, that would cause the ball to just fly up and never to be seen again?
You know, this is some funny stories, and of course, myself being involved with an ownership of a lane, it's very difficult for the ball to leave the confines of the lane. However, for some unknown reason, they find their way out. And we have found lanes. This is no lie now. We have found balls, I should say. Looked for a long time, my partner and myself, and we found the ball embedded into the ceiling behind and above the lane. I have found balls that were like 5 lanes over, looked for a long time, and finally checked the racks. They find their way, but to answer your question, there's a heavy curtain, as you see, looking at the 7-pin, which is supposed to absorb a lot of that stuff. There's a couple 2x4s with some plywood covering the top. So a lot of times you see it leave your sight and think it's gone forever. Probably it just happens so fast that it is there in the pit. But we find them out sometimes. I've had one whiz by me as I was walking down the lanes one day.
Well, you could almost have predicted that something like that would happen. Tim Lipke throws the big strike in the 10th. How often does it happen that way? How about a double? Well, the 5-9.
It's a double, but not quite the kind that Timmy was thinking of. So Dan Brodeur is going to move on. Bob Kelly out of the flames and into the fire, I should say, and it doesn't get any easier.
Well, Tim Lipke just threw a 390.
Ho-hum, 390.
It's interesting, Dan Brodeur threw that triple strike in the first game. He hasn't had a strike since. Threw 4 strikes in that first game. Hasn't had one since.
Well, in a 3-game match, if someone says, well, we're going to give you 4 strikes, where do you want them? 1, 2, 3, and 4. You're going to get them, you might as well get them together. He's at 430 with 1 box to go.
Which means that even after those 2 first strings that were terrific, he won't even end up on the top 5 in terms of the high triple, which shows you how difficult those scores are to attain.
Right. Nice try. But more important, he's going to get the W and move on to week number 2 of this ladder. And their quest for that tournament champion berth. Qualification, I should say.
430. Make it 440. And there's the total. 440 for Dan Brodeur and a win over Tim Lipke. Fine match, and we will be back to talk to the bowlers and have our bonus ball contest. Don't go away. Welcome back to Candlepin Stars and Strikes. Tim Lipke, our runner-up on this afternoon's show. We do have a check for you for $100. Hey, 390 is, you know, 390 is a winning score a lot of times.
Well, after the first 2 strings, I was going to tell Dan, at least if I can keep it under 100, I'm doing real good. He bowled super, he really did.
And those 2 strings, those first 2 were terrific.
That really, yeah, it's a little hard to come out of the gate when you see a 59 and a 61 or 66, whatever he had. It's especially when you throw 31, 36, and you're still 40, 50 pins behind.
Well, I'm sure we'll be seeing you again. Good to see you, Tim.
Thanks you very much.
Thanks for coming.
I'll be back.
All right.
Thank you.
That's Tim Lipke, and now Dan Brodeur is going to step up and try and see if he can get us our 2nd winner in a row on the bonus ball contest. Head over to lane 31 there, Dan, and we'll have you roll the bonus ball. And we've got $20. We had a winner last week, and again, we have not emptied the TV. So if you had postcards in, they're still here. And let's see if we can pull out a 4 for a winner.
I don't think we're going to empty it today either, Doug.
A 5 is the guess by Ruby Anderson of Manchester, New Hampshire. So Ruby, almost, not quite. You'll be receiving a desk pen set from the Winds and from the NHCBA. And for this man, Dan Brodeur, an outstanding triple. Congratulations.
Thank you. I consider myself lucky. Timmy's tough and just lucked out.
You got it all done in the first 2 games.
Thank God. Yes.
Well, next week you got Bob Kelly coming in.
Very tough. I know him.
We'll be looking forward to it.
Me too.
All right, Dan, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
And from one Dan to another, Bob Kelly next week to come in and provide the opposition.
Well, like Danny says, he knows him well, and he's another great Candlepin bowler. So, but if Danny throws what he had today, I take my chances on 440 every week.
We're out of time. We'll see you next week for Bob Kelly against Dan Brodeur. Don't forget to stay tuned for Stars and Strikes doubles. For Dan Murphy and the whole TV50 Sports crew, so long from Park Place Lanes.